welcome to Cancer Smiles and Sarcasm. Be sure to follow me and leave comments if you like this show, today's show, or any other show, or if you want to hear about something else. Today we have the Pink Hulk. Woohoo! Yeah. All right. The Pink Hulk is really Valerie David. Valerie David is also a cancer patient, and she has a stage show about one woman's journey to finding the superhero within you. It's an award-winning stage show. Congratulations, Valerie.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me be on here today.
Yeah, and so how long has your show been out?
It's been out, its 10-year anniversary is this year.
Wow.
And it has just been the love of my life. And what I find so interesting about this 10-year anniversary is that during the course of the 10 years, I have been diagnosed with cancer 2 more times.
Wow.
So I started out as a 2-time cancer survivor, and as of this year, I am now a 4-time cancer survivor.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I'm adding on the story to the Pink Hulk.
We're going to talk about all of that.
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
That's just crazy. So let's start off with that. Because that's part of what the Pink Hulk is all about, right? Everyone knows the pink breast cancer ribbon, right? So is that where the
Right.
Pink Hulk came from?
Yes, and it's actually twofold with the Pink Hulk. It couldn't have been a better title because in 1998 to 99, I was diagnosed with stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And the ribbon for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, the lymphoma ribbon is green. And we all know that the ribbon for breast cancer is pink. So that title combines both cancers I've had. So the pink being the pink ribbon and the Hulk being green, and that lime green that the lymphoma ribbon is. So it couldn't be a better title.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes. So so I've been a cancer survivor for 27 years.
Wow.
Yes, which is still amazing for me to even grasp that.
Heck yeah, it's surreal, right? Because
It is.
people think, that's the death sentence, and it's not really a death sentence. We're all dying, right? We all have a death sentence, but you have outdone it all. So let's talk about that. First of all, I want to talk about non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and tell the guest a little bit about that.
Yes. So I had a pain in my chest, and I thought it was a pulled chest muscle. And I didn't realize, and luckily, we become very in tune with our bodies. And I think the takeaway is to always trust your intuition and trust your gut. And I knew something was off, but I didn't realize it was going to be cancer. So I had I had it checked out. I went to a doctor who I didn't have a GP at the time, and then my gynecologist suggested a GP. I didn't know that he was actually an oncologist who specializes in lymphoma. And so when I went to see him, he said, let's just take an X-ray of your chest, since I had chest pains and I had trouble breathing. And there showed a mass, but I was 30 at the time, and I was so ignorant. Like, I was like, "Oh, let's just," because he said, "Let's get a CAT scan." And I thought, "Oh, it'll prove that nothing's really there." But it was really something. There's a mass on the X-ray. Let's see what it was. And it ended up being stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So that really blindsided me, and I had chemo, and then it was interesting because when I was diagnosed with breast cancer for the first time 15 years later, I was actually celebrating my 15th anniversary of being cancer-free of lymphoma, going to a trip to Aruba. And then before that trip, I felt a lump, actually not in my breast, but under my armpit, which you still have breast cancer tissue that extends all the way to your almost to your back, under your arm. So it was interesting to celebrate being cancer free of lymphoma. And then, because I was considered cured at the time, because I had a very curable lymphoma. And it was interesting because I felt that lump taking off a sports bra, like, because you're struggling with the sports bra and it's so hard to take off. And I was like, I feel something weird. And it ended up being stage 2 breast cancer. But the interesting part is I was going to wait until my insurance kicked in for a new job because I was worried about finances. And this was in August that I made the discovery that it actually was breast cancer. And if I had waited till October with my new insurance to kick in, I don't know what would have happened because it was a very aggressive form. So luckily, with the urging of a friend of mine who actually had lymphoma and breast cancer, just like I did,
Hmm.
said to me, "Are you crazy? You shouldn't wait. Use the insurance that you have, even though it's not as good as the one that you're gonna be getting. You can't wait on this." And I'm so glad that I listened to her because who knows what had happened. And it also was a lesson to me that health comes first. And I know it's a very big financial burden with those of us going through cancer and treatment, but the cost of my life is way more important than the cost of the treatment.
Well, yeah.
So I immediately in August got it checked. My gynecologist at the time, and this was back 15 years after lymphoma, said, You need to go back to your original hospital where you had lymphoma because you need to get this checked." And I will never forget the worried look on her face. So luckily, I was put into treatment right away. And what's so interesting, Tammy, is that lymphoma and breast cancer share some of the same drugs.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, so I wasn't able to get, I was supposed to be getting adriamycin for the breast cancer, but I had maxed out on it with lymphoma. So I ended up getting Cytoxin and doxytaxel instead. And I had Cytoxin with lymphoma, but that was okay to take again.
Okay.
So it was quite a journey. And it's interesting. I'm so in awe of your story. And I was listening to your podcast talking about yourself. And you had mentioned the fortune cookie that you had read the fortune and it said great opportunity comes from adversity. And
Mhm.
I think this whole journey with having lymphoma and then breast cancer, and then we'll go into the 2 more times of breast cancer, it gave me an opportunity to help other people and use my own show that's supposed to and does inspire others to inspire me when I had to go through 2 more bouts of cancer during the 10 years that I've been performing. And I will not miss a year. I've never missed a year, even when I found out, and then we'll go into fast forward to 2018, I had very bad chest pains again and hard to breathe like I had with lymphoma. And I knew something was wrong again. And I actually thought it was lymphoma because I had the 9 centimeter tumor in my chest, and I was still having the same pain in the same spot. So I thought, oh, I must have lymphoma again. And then I remember calling my doctor because, again, I was having trouble breathing and chest pains and coughing. And I actually called and I said, I have cancer again. And they're like, no, 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 it's probably just pains you're having from working out and lifting weights. And I'm like, no, it's cancer. So I was like, I knew. And so subsequent tests showed that it ended up being metastatic breast cancer stage 4 that was in my chest and my rib cage.
Okay.
So I found out officially when I was performing the Pink Hulk at a festival in Portland, Oregon. And there's a 3-hour time difference. So at 9:45 in the morning, as I was entering the theater to have a tech rehearsal for the Pink Hulk show that night, I got a call from my oncologist in New York, and it's 1:15 there the afternoon, and she said it's metastatic breast cancer. So what's my choice? What do I do, Tammy? And I said, you know what? I'm not letting cancer stop me. And I performed that night and I finished the run.
Awesome. Good for you.
So I was I said to myself, Valerie, you play the Pink Hulk. Now you have to be the Pink Hulk again.
Mm-hmm.
So the interesting part with when I came back from Portland, Oregon, I was provided a drug, a CDK4/6 inhibitor, but 8 months earlier, in between acting gigs, I would work at a medical ad agency. And 8 months before I was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer, I was working on a new metastatic breast cancer drug. And I thought, wow, I don't have metastatic breast cancer, but it sure looks like a great drug if that ever happens to me. And lo and behold, 8 months later, when I get diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer and was offered this one drug, I actually asked the doctor, can I try this drug? Because I worked on its ad campaign and I felt really strongly about it and I wanted to give it a try. And she was very amenable because it was a sister drug and said, whatever you want. And I went on that drug, and 5 months later, I was getting scans, and I was very nervous, and I didn't know what the outcome would be because we all know that back in the day, it's not this way now, but metastatic breast cancer was a death sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many new drugs and clinical trials that there's so many more survivors living with cancer. And I always make a joke. I live in Manhattan. I'll probably get hit by a bike messenger, before cancer takes me down, right? So there's other life risks involved in being in an urban city, cars, buses. So when I got the scans, I was blown away because it actually showed no evidence of disease, that the drug had eradicated the cancer and it was dormant now and not showing up.
Wow.
And we all know that it's always there. Cancer's always there with metastatic breast cancer, but we want it to be Sleeping Beauty, and it was Sleeping Beauty, and it was dormant. And there was a less than 3% chance of the drug working where it would be this outcome of having 100% response. So I was very grateful. I was very thankful. I felt very empowered because I had chosen the drug and
Yeah.
luckily had a medical team that was in agreement with me trying it. So I've been uh, no evidence of disease for the past 8 years.
Okay.
That changed this year. So I feel like they're angels, and I will say with my 9 lives, I've used 6 for other things that happen in my life, not with cancer, but near misses on other things. So I have to be a little more careful. I don't have
Heck
any,
yeah. And
I
don't
don't
run
have
in front
like
of any
somebody,
mail carriers, please.
what'd you say?
And don't run in front of any mail carriers, please.
Exactly. I
Or
know.
buses.
I know. Don't fall into a manhole in the city without its cover. So I it was kind of crazy what happened. I have 3 lives left, so I'm gonna use them judiciously, my 9 lives. So this is crazy, and I always make this joke, Tammy. When in 2021, I had gone to the gym to work out diligently. I'm always trying to work out, always trying to lose the weight from being on estrogen blockers, in menopause. Oh, it's so easy to lose weight. Not,
Yeah.
but I'm was trying my best, and I tripped over a piece of equipment, which then I joked that exercise is hazardous to your health. And I ended up breaking my nose, and it was wild. I I had my eyeglasses cut into my nose and it was bleeding, and the gym was very nice, and I put toilet paper up my nose, like Rocky, and,
Gosh.
it swelled, and I was told to go to the emergency room. So I went to the emergency room and got a CAT scan. But and then, the wonderful thing that didn't happen 27 years ago is that you can look in your portal now. There were no portals back then where you could see your results, and there was no scans that were in your portal. They were actual scans that you had to take with you and move from place to place and put up on a light board. They were actually films,
Yeah.
but now they don't do that anymore. So it was such an advancement to me. It was like the Jetsons, right? And that we were now in the
Yeah. And
Jetsons
you're talking about your
card.
healthcare portal from your hospital. Yeah.
Exactly. So I looked at my chart and I saw, oh, broken nose. And I was like, yeah, I could have told you that. But I didn't read what was on the bottom of the report because I didn't think to look at it because I knew I was like, I could have told you I'd broken my nose. And the ER doctor said there was actually a mass that was found on the CAT scan. So that was unbelievable. So at first we thought it was metastatic breast cancer that spread to my head, but it turned out to be a meningioma, which is the most common type of benign brain tumor. 40% of the tumors are benign meningiomas. So all they had to do was monitor it these past few years, Tammy, and it's something I've probably had for a very long time, for years, and it's like a rock in your head. So it was good that they found it, and I never had any symptoms from a brain tumor. I never had any problems with it. It was just luckily found on the scan. So then in 2025, in December, again, we're very in tune with our bodies, and I knew something was wrong. I can't explain it, but that November of this last year, I just was a crazy person. I was, like, very emotional, I was crying. It was like I was having a period, and getting the menstrual cycle craziness that we used to have before menopause.
Mhm.
And but I wasn't, and I was like, I've been in menopause for several years, and I'm like, something's really wrong. It was almost like alarm bells were going off, and I just didn't understand why I was feeling this way. Something's very wrong with me. And I remember telling my breast cancer oncologist, I'm like, I just am really off right now. Something is not right. So when I had my December 2025 scan MRI of my brain, I knew something was wrong. And I was like, I just woke up and knew something was wrong. So when the doctor came in, my neuro oncologist said to me, your brain scan showed that your meningioma grew and it's going to have to come out. And I said, I knew this. I said, and before she even said that, Tammy, I said, it grew, didn't it? And she's like, yeah. How did you know? And I said, I just did. So then we were scheduling the surgery for 2026, and I was very nervous about it because at the time I love my hospital, New York Presbyterian at Columbia. At that time, Tammy, in January, they had a nurses strike. The
Ooh.
nurses were striking, and so I supported the nurses striking However, I was afraid about getting the proper care because the nurses were on strike. So I was going to postpone the surgery from instead of January to have it in March. And my surgeon said, Valerie, I just don't think we should postpone it. I'm like, all right, because if I didn't get it out, I would be getting symptoms, which could be seizures or my eyesight changing because it was in the frontal lobe. So you don't want to have symptoms of a brain tumor. It's better to get it out at the size it is so you don't risk having symptoms. And again, I never had any symptoms because it's always been monitored and it was caught early.
Mm.
So I decided, okay, let's go ahead and do January. And I had it removed. And I was very blessed to have my sister with me. My mom was 90, so she and my dad used to always come and help, but my dad had passed away, and I'm sorry about your father passing away. I know how hard that is, and my mom wasn't in a physical and mental condition to come stay with me at 90 years old, so my sister helped. And then after the surgery, I had my other sister come and friends, and I had round the clock help for about 3 weeks with people staying with me
Nice.
to make sure I was okay, which was really wonderful. And actually, Tammy, it was so wonderful. It was like, even though it was under crazy circumstances, it was like having a slumber party.
Oh,
It was incredible. And I had one friend, Helene, who was always like, take your meds. I called her Nurse Ratchet. And it was great having Jennifer and Pam there, and my cousin Amy stayed, and Kristen stayed, and Helene stayed. And so people came over to visit. It was really wonderful because I felt like the boy in the plastic bubble. I wasn't really allowed to go out. I had to be very careful. I had staples in my head. And, it was major surgery, more major than any surgery I had before because lymphoma, I did not have surgery. With stage 2 breast cancer, I only had a lumpectomy that was under my arm, and it was a very easy surgery, and I had chemo and radiation for the breast cancer and just chemo for the lymphoma. And this time it was literally cracking my head open like Frankenstein's laboratory.
yeah. Yikes.
So it was very scary. It was a very risky surgery. I was panicked. The visiting nurses that helped through the strike were wonderful. They were from all over the country. I met nurses from New Orleans and California and Georgia and Tennessee, and they were wonderful nurses, and they were there until the strike was over. So I was getting my staples out a couple of weeks later, and I think the hardest time I've ever gone through with cancer was what I'm about to tell you. So I went to get my staples removed, and the pathology report came back then. And my doctors told me that the growth of the meningioma wasn't the meningioma that grew. It turned out that metastatic breast cancer cells had been the growth, and they were growing inside the benign tumor,
Oh,
which is a very rare occurrence called a collision Mets tumor, a 1 to 2% chance of that ever happening, where
wow.
two tumors fuse together. And it was so that meningioma ended up being both benign and malignant. So that entered into a realm of fear that I had never had before, even when I had metastatic breast cancer 8 years earlier,
Yeah.
because now it had entered into my head, and it was on the dura, on the base of the skull, where the frontal lobe meningioma had been. And I don't think I've ever been more scared in my whole 27 years of having cancer. And it was a shock to the doctors. they had never seen this happen. They knew of it, but I had a team of 4 because we had to now circle back my oncologist, my breast cancer oncologist, now that it became under breast cancer again. So she became the quarterback because it's now a breast cancer issue. And I had a wonderful surgeon, and I also had, and then I'll circle back with subsequent, what do we do now? So it was recommended that I had to have radiation in the area where the tumor was taken out. So the radiation could eradicate any microscopic metastatic breast cancer cells that were still might be there.
Okay.
Now, the interesting part is that I don't blame my breast cancer for the radiation because I would have gotten radiation anyway, because the meningioma tumor, it is in 3 grades, grade 1, 2, and 3. If it were grade 1, I would not get radiation. If it were grade 2 and 3, which showed it was a faster growing tumor, I would have radiation. So because it was grade 2 and it was metastatic breast cancer, there was no question that I would be getting the radiation.
Hmm.
So I had the radiation treatment, which I felt like it was an amazing experience because I had a mask that looked like Silence of the Lambs, mask that Anthony Hopkins had. Clarice, Clarice, in the movie, I looked like him, and I also was very, very pro my healthcare and proactive and being my own patient advocate. And I asked the doctor, if I'm going to be in that radiation room for an hour of radiation treatment in a tube, I want to bring in music. So we all know with the MRIs, you can't bring in a phone because of the metal and everything like that. But with the radiation, you are. And he'd not really had a patient do that before. And I said, I'd like to play this very lovely piano beach sound music that I had from Insight Timer, which is this free meditation app that's wonderful that I use a lot. And I grew up in Virginia Beach, so and I played the piano, so hearing piano music with beach sounds, I have no doubt helped me get through that
Oh,
radiation
nice.
because I could transcend what was happening and picture myself on the beach, and it really calmed me down. And the funny part was my doctor loved it, Dr. Wang, and he said afterwards, I know you were feeling zen, and I was feeling zen right there with you. Because he could hear it, everybody could hear it. So I think it was a good thing for all of us to hear and to experience together and have this zen moment in such a distressful, stressful time. And so that worked like a charm, and I was able to be in a tube for an hour, which was the longest I'd ever been in a tube. I don't know if the listeners out there know that when you're in an MRI or radiation tube to your head, you are in a tube with only a couple of inches above your face. So you kind of feel like you're in a coffin,
Yeah.
and it's very suffocating. A lot of people have to get Valium and because they get claustrophobic, but I did really well. And my doctor was like, "You didn't move a muscle,
Really?
like you were completely still." And because the person before me, I had to wait an extra hour because the patient before me kept moving during her radiation, and when you move, the machine automatically cuts off. because you don't want any radiation except for the place it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I felt, yo, look at me. I'm a badass pink Hulk. I didn't move once. And so I didn't, I was happy to be able to do that. But I remember him saying, I'm so sorry you have to wait. The patient before you keeps moving and we have to keep starting over the radiation. So I think that music really helped me. And then just having had 27 years of cancer experience of CAT scans and MRIs and PET scans, that it 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 led me to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And subsequent scans have showed, thank goodness, no evidence of disease.
Okay.
But then we go back to, what do you do with that anxiety of more tests coming up? And I have a PET scan coming up. So, of course, I have a lot of anxiety because I'm under the radar right now. I have to have more scans and more frequency of scans. And so, I am the pink Hulk, and some of what I had heard with your other podcasts, which were amazing, and I'm so honored to be a part of it, is that, we're allowed to give ourselves grace. So whenever I get scared and I tell people, you're going to be fine. Don't worry. You're the Hulk. It's going to be fine. And you've got this. And I'm like, you know what? The pink Hulk is allowed to be scared.
Yeah.
She's allowed to have her down days. And I've said this to people, and I said, I am allowed to be angry. I'm allowed to be scared. I'm allowed to feel whatever I feel, because I feel the most important thing, and I do a lot of patient advocacy with the pink Hulk. And after every show, I have talkbacks with oncologists and with fellow breast cancer survivors. And with the breast cancer survivors and we always have the 10 things you don't tell a cancer patient. Don't say, don't worry, don't worry. Well, of course we'll be worried. So it's very helpful to me when friends and family say, you know what, Valerie, I understand you're going through this and you have every right to feel this way. And I know people are very loving and caring, and they're doing their best, and they're trying to help in any way that they can. But it's most helpful for me if someone acknowledges my anxiety rather than saying, you'll be fine,
Yeah.
don't worry, you have nothing to worry about. Because I do, and I will have something to worry about for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Well, you've proven it. Gosh, 4 times. So,
Yeah, like 4 times, and I'm having a special anniversary show. I wish you could come from Colorado to
yeah.
see it. I'm having a special anniversary shows for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and what is so unique about this is that the pink Hulk is getting a bit of a facelift, because now I'm adding this breast cancer tumor story
Oh, yeah.
into the pink Hulk. So I'm excited to try something new after 10 years. It couldn't hurt to have a facelift. I didn't want to have to change the material, and I don't want any more new material, but I think this gives an opportunity to now talk about this new development and to never give up hope. And that's what the pink Hulk motto is to never ever give up hope, even in the most dire circumstances. Because, in the pink Hulk show, this is actually in the story where I actually, in 2018, I consulted a metastatic breast cancer survivor group, and I called the woman to talk to her about the support group. And the first thing she said to me is, you have a 3 to 5 year life expectancy. I hate to say you're not going to die of old age. And I was like, what? And just the crazy things that people say to you. And I loved how you said cancer smiles and sarcasm. And I used a bit of sarcasm. And I also said, I've never gotten married and I've always wanted to meet someone. And she's like, I'm sure you'll find someone who'll appreciate the time you have left. And then very sarcastic sarcastically, I was like, "So, do a lot of people go to your support group?"
Yeah.
And she said, "Yes, yes, they do. But keep in mind, a lot of them have died."
Wow.
So I did not go to that support group.
Holy shit.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it was like incredible. And I called her a year later and told her that she should never say that to somebody.
Yeah.
Nobody has the right to tell you when you're going to live and when you're going to die.
Well, and first of all, that stat is not correct because it's 3 to 5 years if it's been into your organs, and yours has not been into your organs.
Yeah,
So that was incorrect information anyways. But I mean,
definitely.
regardless, it's like, wow. Yeah, I
I
really wanna go
know.
to your support group. Yeah,
I
please.
know. I was like, "Please quit your day job."
Yeah.
Like, when it says don't quit your day job, I'm like, "Quit your day job, because lady, you are not helpful." And I did not find that helpful, but it's actually a very comedic bit in the show because I get a lot of reactions and people going, and I was like, and I never called her again.
Yeah.
And, there's so much with breast cancer and with cancer that I was doing some research, and the American Cancer Society said that in 2026, there'll be 322,000 new cases of breast cancer. But I want people to hear this story and your story as well, and your other guests on your podcast, that we're living with this and we're living the best lives and we're not letting this stop us.
Yeah.
And I know that there's hurdles and we have to deal with this for the rest of our life. But I know for me that I am the pink Hulk, and I'm proud of that, and had to be the pink Hulk twice during these 10 years of performing, when I'd walk the walk and talk the talk when I was diagnosed again. And what you're doing and what I'm doing and other people interviewed on your podcast is that we're giving people hope, and we're also letting people say, "You know what? Cancer's not fun, and that this can be very difficult, and we're not denying that." I just want people to know that there is hope, and there's so many new drugs out there and new things going on in clinical trials, that it doesn't have that we can be living with this for a very long time. It's not the end.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not the end, and I think you're living proof of that. I wanted to go back and just kinda inform our listeners that the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, that is cancer in the lymphatic system, right? So
Correct. Cancer of the blood. It's
yep.
it's leukemia, lymphoma, and multiple myeloma are all blood cancers.
Okay. And 79,000 people are diagnosed with that each year, and I looked it up, and it's the 11th most ranked cancer, but definitely is curable, as you have
Mhm.
seen from Valerie. Then I just wanted to re-inform our listeners as well that metastatic breast cancer, even though it's in a different part of your body. So, for example, Valerie's, yours was in your brain, and then again in your ribs
Chest.
and
Yeah.
chest, but it's still treated as breast cancer. It still is the same, has the same genetic makeup of breast cancer. It's just in a different part of your body. And no evidence of disease is what they now say because it's not curable. It's just sitting there waiting, I guess, to come back and haunt us in a different day. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and which Valerie's story shows very well, and so those PET scans always bring anxiety.
Exactly, because you don't want it to say "boo," come out of hiding and say "boo" again.
Yeah,
And that's something that we live with, but we can't let that permeate our thoughts, because if I worried about that 24/7, I would not be getting out of bed. And with the opportunity with the Pink Hulk, such it's been such a wonderful light, and I've been so proud of it, and I'm a big patient advocate, and I was very grateful that during the Biden administration, I was given a Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award,
Wow.
Resilience in Action, for my patient advocacy work, because I think that the show, it goes beyond performing the show, and the magic happens during those audience talkbacks. And I've been a public speaker for Fred Hutch for their Survivorship Day, and that's in Seattle. And I just recently was on a panel at Pfizer to with other patients, not just of cancer, but talking about how AI affects the doctor-patient relationship and how AI is affecting the healthcare industry. So it's offered me so much wonderful ways to help other people. And then I did, right after my surgery, I did a Zoom, what are coping mechanisms? So I think that was really important. I did a seminar with my former lymphoma oncologist, Dr. Carol Portlock and Stacy, and we actually met and then did a Zoom recording and then had it on a Zoom live where we had people talking and coming in asking questions and what kind of coping mechanisms and about. I think it's very important never to be afraid to ask for help. I definitely got counseling through this, and I still do, and not be afraid to ask for help. I had people help me with laundry and cooking meals when I was going through chemo. And just to say to yourself, there, you can do this. And I remember when I had breast cancer stage 2, after 8 months of chemo and radiation, 2 months after I finished, I rode and completed a 40-mile bike marathon
Wow.
in New York City at the 5 Borough Bike Tour. And for me, it was such a huge triumph because I crossed the finish line, not just crossing physically the line demarcation with the bike crossing the line, but I crossed the finish line of cancer.
Yeah.
And then for this past year, this year, I remember I had a wonderful doctor. I've been very lucky with my healthcare team. And I told my surgeon, Dr. Gill, that after this surgery, I want to walk. I don't want my speech affected. And, I want my memory, especially being an actor. And I said, 2 months after my surgery, I am scheduled to walk as a metastatic breast cancer model for this organization called Runway for Recovery, where 75 models from all over were to be in New York City to walk the runway. And the 75 of us were in different categories. There were people that finished treatment, there were people in treatment, and there were people who were metastatic, such as myself. And I said to him, in 2 months after this surgery, I want to walk the runway. And he said, "You will." And I did. So it was a huge victory that exactly 2 months after my surgery and radiation, I walked the Runway for Recovery, which is an amazing
Congratulations.
organization that gives grants to metastatic breast cancer patients and their families, that helps with groceries or tutoring for kids, the children and the families, and they give grants. And they're in their 20th year, and they started in Boston, and they're having their 20th anniversary in Boston, and I'm going to be walking the runway again in Boston at the end of October of this year, and also in celebration and honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October.
Awesome. Wow. So you're out there, man. You were just
Yeah,
like
I'm
hitting
like,
it, hitting the streets.
yes, and I so admire you, and I thank you for sharing your story. And and being there for everybody, and having this platform where we can talk about what it's like to go through. And I listen to your podcast, and I know of the struggles that we all have, and yet we keep going.
Yeah. And and you speak a lot to the ability to work. You haven't even missed a show yet, have you?
Nope, I'm not missing a show. I've done the show every year for 10 years, and I'm doing it 3 times in the fall. And also, I have a second show called Baggage from Baghdad: Becoming My Father's Daughter, which I am also doing in the fall. And I'm very proud to be able to go back to acting 7.5 months later from this surgery. And Baggage from Baghdad is about my father having to flee Iraq in 1941 from a pogrom in Baghdad called the Farhud. And I think it's a very timely story because it's not just a Jewish tale, but it speaks to what's happening in Gaza, Israel, Ukraine, anybody who's had to be evacuated or forced out of their country and having to start a new life in a new country that's not so welcoming at times. And my family had to leave what they could carry when they fled Baghdad in 1941 from again, a little known fact in history, the Farhud, which not many people know about. But it's very, unfortunately, it's very relevant to today's times. And so I wanted that show to be a history lesson, not history repeating itself. So anyone can identify with it. And in fact, when I did it in Vermont a few years ago, there was a Muslim father who came up to me and said, I had to flee Baghdad in 2005 with my daughter, and I know exactly what you went through. And he said, we are family. So that was so important to me because we all need to celebrate our differences and not be repelled by them, that we're all together, that we're all one people, and we shouldn't let religion divide ourselves and have all this chaos that's going on in all over the world right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think so I have that show and Pink Hulk, and both of them are very timely topics and very important topics.
And is the Pink Hulk, is it kind of comedy in addition to?
It is. The Pink Hulk is definitely comedy because I tried to find love because I wasn't sure if I was gonna have a mastectomy or a lumpectomy. And before I found out it was a lumpectomy, I was calling guys that I had dated before, and I was like, "So, you wanna meet me at 10:30 tonight, and I'll come on over?" And so it's all about me trying to find love, and the tagline is, "A cancer diagnosis only means one thing, time to get laid, and come see if I have a happy ending." So, it's very funny because it's about, it's more than it's about reclaiming your body. It's about accepting this new body that we have post-cancer from surgery and the medications we're on, and the estrogen blockers and the weight gain, and looking at yourself, that AD and BC, it's before cancer, what your life was, and mourning that former self, but rising above to become a new person that is better than what you were before and made you a stronger person. So it's very funny, and the amount of rejections I had gotten, like calling guys, no thanks, thanks anyway. And I was like, what? So, and there are all these guys I knew, and one of the guys I'm very, very good friends with, and we laugh about it, because I was like, he was one of them that rejected me. I was like, "You fool, how could you?" And we're very good friends, and so it's a very funny show, and there's also very serious moments, like I take people through the radiation, and I have a green laser that simulates what it was like being in radiation, and I actually have my radiation wedge from when I had radiation, and I bring it with me on stage. So some of the props are real from what I went through when I had cancer. The radiation wedge that had protected the breast that didn't get the radiation, and the wig that I used is in there as well. The original wig, and so I have original props there that that are part of the show. And I've been gifted things from the show. I When I did the show in Gothenburg, Sweden, this woman came up to me and gave me pink sunglasses, because at the beginning of the show, the top of the show, I am simulating being in Aruba at the beach, which is where I discovered, that I was probably having a cancer again from that trip, because I felt the lump there.
Mhm.
And I used those pink sunglasses in
Nice.
there. And then people have gifted me tablecloths that are breast cancer pink and the ribbon that I use in the show. So I use a lot of props that people have given me as gifts after the show that became part of the show.
That's awesome. And so you've been in Sweden, you're based out of New York, but you're also having shows in Philly, Wyoming, all
Right,
around the state.
right. Yes, in 65 different venues, over 25 different states and 4 countries: Finland, Sweden, England, and Iceland.
Wow.
And so, it's and because of the Pink Hulk, I'm so grateful, because I wouldn't have if it weren't for the Pink Hulk, I wouldn't be traveling like this. It's been amazing. Plus, I'm meeting family. I did the show in Providence, Rhode Island, and met cousins that I normally wouldn't have met if it hadn't been for the show, because I was doing the show near where they live.
That's
So,
awesome.
and it's been wonderful to make friends all over the world that I'm still very close with. And there's a bond with traveling, and it's been a wonderful experience, and I don't know if I would have traveled to these countries if it weren't for the Pink Hulk, and I'm very grateful for the accolades and awards that it's won as well, especially in Gothenburg, because it was the first time I had done the show in a non-English speaking country. And even though they do speak English, English is not the primary language. And the fact that I got the highest award there showed me that the show is universal in how it feels when people see it. And it's not just about cancer, it's about fighting back any adversity in life. And I think that's why it resonates, because it's not just a cancer show, because like your fortune cookie said, great opportunity comes from adversity, and the adversity doesn't always have to be cancer. A lot of people said to me they were inspired by the show because they were not happy with their lives, so they quit their job and started a new job, and because the show promotes also living life on your own terms. And I think that's very important, because in as children, we have all these dreams, and I don't know why in adult life that goes away, and why we still can't have those dreams that we've had as a little kid. Like, I want to grow up to be a blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Or I want to grow up to be blah, blah, blah. And then somehow we become adults, and then those dreams don't seem attainable anymore.
Yeah. I
So,
think sometimes it's
right.
we're afraid of change, but
Yes.
yeah, for sure. And how hard
Yes.
that is. But yeah. Well, that's great. And so if somebody wants to find you, they can go on to pinkhulk.com.
Yes, pinkhulkplay.com, www.pinkhulkplay.com, and you'll find the schedule for both the Pink Hulk, and I put baggage from Baghdad as a tab on there as well. And I'm on Instagram on Valerie David underscore Pink Hulk Play as well, that they can find me, and feel free to reach out. And I'm so honored, and thank you, Tammy, for having me be a guest on your incredible podcast, Ragdoll Warrior. I love the name
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
Thanks. I mean, you just walked us through what it's like to go through a huge journey and how we really can be survivors and how this death sentence really isn't a death sentence for everyone. So
No,
I really appreciate you and everything that you do. And I'm glad
thank
that you're out living life to its fullest,
Yes.
despite all these adversities and all the cancer. Holy shit, man.
I know, and I'm like, you know what? After brain tumor surgery and radiation, I'm coming back. The
Oh,
Pink
yeah.
Hulk is hulking out on cancer again, and I'm not letting it stop me. And I'm very grateful to be able to start performing again in the fall. I had to take a pause, that's for sure, and had to recover from a very, very difficult surgery and very difficult radiation. But we go on and we fight to to get back to what we want to do. And
Absolutely.
there's no reason that if because I always say, if I can do it, you can do it. You know, if
Yep.
that makes sense. Yes.
Well, I appreciate you. I hope that some of our listeners get to go out and see the Pink Hawk. I hope that one day I get to see the Pink
Me
Hawk.
too. I'm gonna come to Colorado and
Yeah, for sure. That'd be awesome. And I'm,
yes.
maybe even try out Idaho because I might be moving there. So,
Yes, I
you know,
did hear that. Yeah, I'll go to Colorado and then follow you to Idaho.
awesome. All right.
Yes, well,
Well,
thank you. Tammy, I also wanted to give a shout out to publicly thank all of my family, friends, and doctors who have always been there for me and rallied around me when I faced my bouts with cancer. I am so grateful for all of their support to help me get back on my feet, especially during this latest battle.
thank you. And everyone, make sure you leave a comment